shine. Let the sun 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 shine.
Hey, what's happening over there? What's going on in Philly today?
Hey, love, how are you? It's a beautiful day.
I'm good. Long weekend. The weather is good. It's getting a little scary out there.
Everybody's relaxed. Although, the folks that, they acted out during the holiday. They kind of, all gathered for some music. Music brings people together. So it wasn't a whole lot of social distancing in some areas. That was problematic.
I know. Which is it's funny because it's going to be a good discussion tonight because we're in that in between where we got people who going back to work and reopening, and then we have people who are still at home, stay at home, and anxiety of what it brings in between because people are getting pissed off. And when they go outside, people don't have a mask on, and vice versa, So it's gonna lead to a great discussion. So thanks, Katie, for coming in. Marvin, Leslie, Sharon, and Morgan. Mr. Scott, how are you over there, sir? Simone, what's going on? We have the one and only resident therapist in the house tonight, Dr. R.G. Allen Wilson.
Virtual kisses.
What's up, Dina? How you doing? And Sydney's out there from LA. All the LA people are on. I'm loving it.
Because it's earlier there. Like 3 hours, early. Right?
Right, 3 hours there. So let's just get into it because this really is affecting a lot of people. A lot of people right now are saying, you know what, I'm nervous about returning to my normal life. What does that look like for me? I'm having anxiety because I've been cooped up for some people longer than others. So some people like us up here, we've been in the house almost going on 80 days.
12 weeks. That's 3 months.
Yeah. So a lot of people are really having a difference in opinion about what's safe. So I think this really is playing with the fact of a New Yorker, for instance, who's taking this seriously. It was the epicenter. People really did have a problem with people going outside. And then when you see pictures of people in the park and people in the pool or all of that kind of people at the beach, I mean, people have to live their lives, but how do we manage that? So, hey, what's up, Lewis? Hey, Kara. Hey, Janine. Hey, Dana. Hey, Mr. Harlem Knight himself. Welcome to the show with Dr. R.G. Allen Wilson. So we're going to talk about the anxiety of going back into the workplace and what does that mean for a lot of people. And it can play out in a lot of different ways. And one little story that I want to bring up before we get into that is how it's going to play out, because we saw how it played out just this weekend with people of privilege when you ask them to do one simple thing and they want to call the cops on you. So we can bring that into the discussion because we know privilege is going to raise its ugly head this summer, and it's going to be a long summer because how are you going to go into an establishment when you have on your mask, someone doesn't, and they're not taking in consideration your health, your livelihood? Because what people don't realize is that you might have an elderly person at home that you have to go back to. Or you might have someone at home that have an autoimmune disease or something like that that's going to affect them. So when you go out in public, you want to make sure that you're going to maintain yourself and your safety and for everything. So let's just kind of open that up and have that discussion about why are people having this anxiety, Miss Dr. Argy.
Well, listen, Charlie, I don't know. You saw in Philly, it was Brewery Town. People were out there listening to music. In the Ozarks, which I just started binging, Morgan and I, on the Ozark. I didn't know anything about it because, you know, I'm just at the office. So we decided to watch that in Missouri. And then I see this picture of all these people in the pool on Friday, celebrating with a big flag, celebrating Memorial Day, nobody's social distancing. And then in Ocean City. So it doesn't really seem to matter whether it's in the hood or whether it's in, you know, the Midwest, whether it's down south. You know, people are not disciplined, right? You know, and we knew what was going to happen. I call it the weather. I'm calling the weather a weapon of mass distraction.
Okay. Okay.
Why? Because typically the weather, when it's nice and we live in a region where there's multiple different seasons, we want to go out, we want to play, we want to frolic, we want to have a good time. That's not the issue. The issue is that we have been entitled for too long, had too much access, not everybody, because there's Black folk that don't have the access that other white folks have, you know, or privileged folks, if you will. But for the most part, here in the U.S., we kind of have laid our hands on. We can do what we want to do, when we want to do it, how we want to do it, why we want to do it, and where we want to do it. Right? We want to have that access. And now this situation is starting to limit us with what we can do that's safe. Nobody likes it, right? Nobody likes the fact that we don't have the answers that we want. Nobody likes the fact that it's going to be longer than we thought, and this is more a marathon, not a sprint.
Right.
But as Dr. Fauci said a while ago, how much pain and suffering are any of us willing to accept in order to get back to some sense of normalcy sooner rather than later? Right. So each person has to make their determination of what it is that they're willing to sacrifice. And then on top of that, this decision that we make is not just for us or our families, it's for the greater good. Right. So that's where we find the delineating factor, the line in the sand is really, how am I processing my decision making, and is it going to harm me or someone else? And then how will I feel? Like, let's kind of play the tape all the way down the road. How kick the can down the road? How you won't feel when you made a decision to go out there and not social distance, and now your loved one is gone because you were asymptomatic, but they got the Rona, and they died. So there's a lot of anxiety. Anxiety is brought about by fear of the unknown, worry, uncertainty, and there really aren't any answers for us in this moment of what we are to expect, especially in this second wave. So one of the things I say about anxiety, Charlie, is we've got to manage our anxiety by accepting what we can't control, because there's some things that we cannot control.
And I think that's where people get confused at times, because they feel as though they can control the situation. I think it's just bad. For me, the way I manage this whole process, I've been able to just back away, and just everything that I had on the docket for 2020, I just canceled, you know. And that way I knew when things were right, I would be able to control it. So I just gave up my life, basically, you know, MV trip, going to North Sea Jazz in Rotterdam, everything that I had that was planned for the future, that I know I had planned, I just let it go. And so therefore I knew, based on the fact that also too, we're dealing with a government that's not really giving us true leadership for us to make certain decisions. So, you know, so if you're going to try to make a decision based on a psychopath, is that right? Psychopath? Sociopath. I'm sorry. Sociopath in the White House, it's very hard to make a decision with someone who is not leading us in the proper way.
And not mentally well, right? Not mentally well. But let me help you with this, the language. You like cancel. We live in a cancel culture anyway, right? You get in an argument with somebody, cancel. You're deleted, right? We move on. We get another 100 so friends or what have you. This is the culture that we're in, which is fascinating to me, because we're in a cancel culture, yet people don't want to cancel their plans the way that you talked about when you saw the writing on the wall, and you saw that this was more a marathon than a sprint, then you were able to adjust. Remember what we talked about maybe a month ago, that you have to accept what your reality is, then adjust your mindset, then adapt, which is strategy and technique to adapt to your new norm. Then you can begin to appreciate what it is that you've learned along the way so that you can then acknowledge your new attitude. That will get you through this process. But if you don't do that, I want your listeners to know that anything that we resist, usually that's where the issue is. So when we're bumping up against our resistance, I don't want to stay in. I'm stuck in the house. I want my old life. Then we do what we call, we start dealing with, I'm losing out. I'm canceling all of this stuff that I planned. And I want people to use the language that you're letting go, because letting go gives you the power to shift and change your trajectory. But if you think about it from the perspective of, I just lost out. I lost out on all my plans. I lost out on my future. I lost out on graduation and weddings and, all of these things, then you're not really looking at it from the perspective of what are you gaining? Because this is temporary inconvenience for long-term gain. So letting go gives us a little bit more control back. So yeah, we have to focus on what we can control versus what we can't.
Okay. That sounds good. I like that. I think a lot of people call it quarantine fatigue, because they're tired of being in-house. And a lot of people don't want to put in the work to figure out, like, what else can I do? I think a lot of people, it's funny when you think about it. A lot of people don't want to, we always talk about how we want the European lifestyle and how we want, the Europeans get 3 months off. Well, you got time off, but now nobody don't know what to do with it. Think about that.
You have time. You can co-create in your family, with yourself, with your community, whatever it is that you want to create. You and I have been, the creative juices have been flowing in terms of your show and the show that I do in the morning with the Quarantine Talks. That's just the tip of the iceberg. But people have complained. I do this for a living, listening to people in their spaces that they're not so happy with. And I hear from a lot of clients that they've always been unhappy because they don't have enough time. They can't be creative. They can't write the book. They can't do the business plan. They can't start off from their new job or whatever. Now you have more time on your hands than you probably will ever have again in life. And the question is, we'll get through this. We will grow through this. The question is not whether it will be over. At some point it will be over. The question is, who will you be at the end of this journey?
Right.
Will you have doubled down to level up on all the things that you wanted to do? Right? Would you have used this time wisely to learn about yourself and your family, to create new innovative things to win? Or will you have sat around complaining about you just want to get out of the house? And then finally, when it's over, you've endured extreme suffering because you didn't listen to the rules and didn't have social distancing discipline. And you're no further along than when this started several months ago because you've chosen to not use it for the opportunity that it reveals to itself.
Wow. I like that. Basically, how can we manage these anxieties that people have? So what are the ways that we should do? How should we go forth with this?
So first, we accept what we can't control. We already said that. And then practice gratitude. It's the attitude of gratitude. So we have to remember a couple things, Charlie. We have to remember that it can always be worse. It can always be worse. We know that social distancing is a privilege. It really is. There are some people that are on top of each other. They don't have the ability to go into another room. If somebody gets coronavirus, they can't move to another place. So it's really important that we focus on what it is that we can control and then be grateful for what we do have versus what we don't have. If you've got an ability you're in a place where you might not be able to sit outside, but you can go into a different room than where you're at. There are some people who are upset because they're working from home and they have their children. And what I say is, oh, what that means when you're working from home is that you have a job. You're still getting a paycheck. Some people are not. What it means when you have to homeschool your children is that you have children that you can homeschool that are healthy and they haven't gotten sick. So I'm asking folks to reduce anxiety by every day having a gratitude journal where you book in that. So you enter in the morning and in the evening, what is at least one thing that you have to be grateful for. That should then help you to kind of go throughout your day, not focusing so much on all the nuances of the world that is unpredictable, but what is it that you can enjoy? We are in control of our own joy. Happiness is based on what's happening. Right. But our joy, our internal joy, is based on our ability to focus on what we do have.
Right. So check this out. So, I think there are a lot of people who don't know how to be grateful. They don't really look at themselves and take the blessings of knowing, like, okay, this situation is happening. Because see, the thing is, this is not happening to this is happening to everybody. It's just not happening to you. So the inconvenience, like I say to most people, something might be delayed, but it's not denied. So even with the kids, when they couldn't graduate, it's not that they can't graduate. I mean, they did graduate.
They are graduating. It's just different.
They just didn't March, and so it's a delayed gratification. And I think that's what we run up against. We are running up against a delayed gratification to validate our existence. And what people don't tend to realize is that through that delayed gratification, you're only butting up against yourself. Your only competition or whatever is going on in your head is what you personally want to show the world, to say, see, look at me, world. Look at what I've done. Look at what my children have done. It's that thing that we do to prove our self-worth of who we are. Am I hitting a nerve out there?
Yes. Delayed gratification, or I would say delayed does not mean denied. Right. And so think about our culture. Our culture and the way in which we function these days is really all about, in social media, will you friend me? Will you follow me? Will you poke me? Will you tweet me? How many friends do I have? It's all about this external validation. When in actuality, what this coronavirus has done, and that's another thing to reduce your anxiety when you think about the silver lining, right? What this has done is it's forced us to not only go indoors in our homes, it's forced us to go indoors in ourselves.
Right.
Really has caused us to become reflective if we're doing what we need to be doing, so that we begin to validate all of who we are, the good and the bad, so that we can then celebrate the good, teach ourselves to do that ourselves, and then also work on the bad. If you're not happy with the state of your life in this moment, guess what? We now have time to work on becoming more comfortable and confident with who we are and where we're going. But it's up to us. And as you and I always say, this is what people have a problem with. They have a problem with putting the work in.
They do.
It's work.
Point blank period. That's in full stop. So we have Dr. Argie Allen Wilson. She is my resident therapist for the show. She's here every Tuesday night, giving you guys a way to just manage this whole pandemic. A lot of people are out going back into the workplace. A lot of people have anxiety about going into the workplace. That's what we're talking about tonight. How can I manage these anxieties? So the first two things, if you missed it, the first one is accept things that you can't control, number one. And number two is practice gratitude. Accepting things you can't control is just basically giving up and letting the universe take its place, and you just dealing within that and taking it day by day and understanding that you need to surrender and given the situation. It's so hard for people to do that. And then, like you said, practicing gratitude, which is, I think, just the blessing in all of this, to really just give back, to sit back and think about, you know, what is it in your life that you have been able to just be like thankful for? You know, because we move so fast. We have these beautiful kids, but we can only shine them up if, you know, if they're graduating, we're not in their lives on a daily because we've been moving too fast. Or you have this beautiful husband, beautiful wife, you don't give them enough time to really appreciate that person in your life and in your space, and just being thankful of that. Or if it's not working for you, understanding I got to do something to make this happen. So we're going to dive into number 3 and talk about what's the third way of how we can manage our gratitude. But before we do that, let me go to the people out here in the just asking the questions, seeing what you guys said. Dana said, being so still is powerful. I'm grateful for you, Charlie. Feeling full every time I'm able to join a masterclass in season. Thank you, Dana. We appreciate you. Leslie, not everyone is comfortable with the idea of going within. Hence, they want to get out so bad that they will risk their lives and others. Now that right there is a word. Leslie, that is a word. I would rather put myself in harm's way, go out and protest, just so I can go back, quote unquote, go back to work, you know. Speak to that, doctor. Help me understand that. Help people understand that they don't want to do the work, that they're willing to risk their health to go out and put themselves in harm's way.
And thank you, Leslie, for that, because it's true. That's why I did this. It's facts that we would rather live sometimes in a known hell than an unknown future, right? You know, and my pastor used to always say that. And so this whole going within, I think the reason why people, I call them runners, because they're running away from themselves. Here's the irony about that. If you've ever walked down the street on a sunny day and you have a shadow, the thing about a shadow is it doesn't go anywhere. So no matter where you go, there you are, or there it is. And so that running piece is because sometimes when we peel back the layers, just like you peel back the layers of an onion, what happens, Charlie? You cut an onion, you peeling back layers, what happens?
Right, you start crying.
You start crying.
Yeah.
Right? And it's metaphoric. This is a metaphorical example of what happens in our lives when we start digging deeper, and we start seeing the pieces of ourselves that we really don't like, the pieces of ourselves that we're ashamed of, the pieces of ourselves that we feel guilty about, or perhaps maybe the anger that wells up because we've lived in these in a life where we had deferred dreams, where something happened and we got derailed and we never got back on track. And so we or others are wondering, well, why are you so angry? Or why do you have an attitude all the time? Why is it that you never seem happy? But we have chosen to continue to work and run and dance away from all of that pain because we don't want to deal with it. So we rather, as Leslie says, go out and put ourselves in harm's way. I got to get out of the house. I got to go party. I got to hang out, when there's really, every city is not open back up fully. So it's not as many places as we think that you can go, maybe the parks and the beaches or what have you, but they rather do that than to sit at home and reflect, restore, set yourself up to rejuvenate and refuel, but most importantly, understand where that pain is so that you can transform that pain into power, which requires you to be in a process. And they call it a process for a reason, because in the process, you're going to learn some things. You're going to learn some things that you don't particularly like, right? There may be some things that you do like. You may find that the thing you've been running from not only is yourself, but the life that you've been living. Maybe you're not really loving the way that you live. And then the question becomes, once you explore that, here's the other thing. I feel like this is a drop the mic moment. Once you know better, Dr. Maya Angelou said this, I did the best that I knew how to do, and once I knew better, I did better. So once you know better, then the question is, what are you going to do about it? because you can always kind of hang your hat on ignorance and say, I just didn't know. But now that or I just didn't have time. Life is so busy. Well, you have no excuses now. Life is not as busy as it once was. So now, if you're willing to dig deeper, you might be surprised at both what you find, and maybe you get pain before you get gain, right? It's maintain, sustain, and gain. But if you then do the work, you can possibly get to a life that you actually imagine, right? I had a client tell me today, she said, I think that I drink, and I can't say the name, but I think that I drink because drinking helps me to be the person that I want to be and that I wish I was versus the person that I am.
Yeah.
And so that's just alcohol.
Yes.
But I will admit that most of us have some kind of vice. It could be, doesn't have to be drinking. It could be you go to church every day and you just hide out there away from your family, or you're a workaholic, or you just don't deal with anything. So you just shut down and you numb yourself, right? Whatever it is, this is an opportunity to stop it, to refocus your energies and get the help. And so, last week you had John Taylor on talking about men, in particular around the runner, Aubrey, and how a lot of that welled up some anxiety and anger in people. And what I would say is that we as people of color in particular, over the years, have not actually done the therapeutic work, because we were told, that means you're crazy if you go to a therapist, or, you don't air your dirty laundry in public, or if you're a religious person, all you need is Jesus. And we didn't get the memo that we actually can do some deeper work if we have a person who just invested. Maybe they are more objective than your mother or your sister, to really help you unpack some of that pain so that you can actually start working with it. Because as long as it's buried, it can't help you.
All right. Well, that's a word for itself. Let's see who else. Mary Ellen said, I can see that I'm not like that, but I can see others will be. Okay, what's up, fam? Hey, John. Sonia, some people can't be with their own thoughts for more than 15 minutes. True. Hey, Janae, what's going on? Michelle Preach, good evening, everybody. Who said some folks can't face their own thoughts because they have to face the choices they made and have to address it. And then there's that. Yes.
And then there's that, right? Life is full of choices.
Yes.
And sometimes when we actually have to sit down and have that reality check with ourselves and identify the choices, we zigged when we should have zagged, we made a choice and someone, our parent or someone says, listen, I don't think you should do that. And you did it anyway, and it landed you here. So then we don't want to deal with that. But I find, and I want to touch on the big F word. The big F word in my business is forgiveness. Because a lot of times we find that the very person that we need to be working on forgiveness of is ourselves. Because I think that we tend to be our worst enemies. And we'll forgive everyone else oftentimes, or let other folk off the hook. But then we wake up every day and we'll have stinking thinking, or we'll tell ourselves that we're not good enough, that we're not worthy enough, that we're not valuable. And if we're not actually saying the words, you ever heard the saying, Charlie, actions speak louder than words?
Yes.
So I can tell the people who have self-hatred or self-loathing or self-dislike by the way in which you treat yourself and the ways in which you accept bad behavior from someone else.
All right.
Teach people how to treat us. And if we love ourselves, we're going to set better boundaries, and we're not going to allow people to just treat us any old kind of way, whether we're at home, whether we're in the workplace, or whether we're in our friend group. You'll just say, like, listen, I love myself way too much for you to talk to me like that.
Right. Right. Let's see what else. You also said, yes, I've learned through COVID that we weren't built to live in this fast-paced world we've created. I always say that the world might be 2020, but our minds are still in 1990. Meaning we haven't really caught up with technology. We can't live that fast-paced world. We can't advance ourselves that quickly. We don't change our thinkings that way. You know, it takes years and years and years before us to have this really progressive mindset. Because, I mean, I would say America is a progressive nation. However, it's mixed up when you know, the secular world from the religion, and so therefore it tends to collide at points. So I can see where that happens. And then I also think just technology moves us too fast sometimes that we're not even ready to see. Whitney also said, once you make a choice, the choice controls the chooser. I like the way she phrased that. The choice controls the chooser.
Ooh, that's good. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Sonia said, living with regret is no way to live. You have to forgive yourself. I totally, you can make a mistake and you have to own it, and you have to say, whether you're in a relationship with somebody, relationship on the job, you went to the job and you cussed everybody out. You got to live with that. You have no employment. That's the choice you decide to make. They probably push you to that limit, but you did that. Or same thing in the house. You said something to your wife, you said something to your husband or to your significant other, your partner, your lover, however you're living your life. And then you regret saying that, but you have to understand where that hurt comes from. And I think that's what you were talking about. Understanding, doing the work of trying to really understanding who we are as a person. I think this whole pandemic for me is just trying to get back to a sense of humanity so we can respect each other.
Woo!
You know?
We went dark for some years, right? We went dark to the place that it became okay to not have a filter, to say whatever you wanted to say, to treat people with disrespect, to not respect our elders or our children. We just went dark. And I think that you're right. The silver lining. So I was going to say the third thing that can help with anxiety is to focus on what you can control. And you can't control everything, and we certainly can't control other people, but we can control parts of ourselves. That's not a false choice. We can then speak truth to power. I believe that truth, trust, and transparency leads to transformational breakthroughs, but you got to be truthful. Right. Then you got to build the trust. If you've breached that trust with somebody that you love, you got to have the courageous conversation and talk about it. Be honest about what you brought to the table. And I think too often we tend to live in these fallacies where we're not being honest with ourselves if we've actually hurt someone. Hurt people. That's not a justification. It's not even an excuse. It is an understanding that sometimes out of our own pain, we will tend to hurt somebody else. So once we begin to build the trust and be truthful, then we can be more transparent. And I think that is the key, Charlie, where we're not transparent with one another. We were talking this morning about the mask and how there's a tension between who will wear a mask, and then some people are just doing it to go into the stores, but they're not wearing it properly or what have you. And I thought to myself, when I was telling John Taylor this morning, I said, how many of us were wearing masks all day, every day before COVID-19 and this pandemic?
Whoa, you going to the kabuki mask. What kabuki mask do you have on today? You know, like, you're right. Who's the real person behind the front? Because I'm not meeting the real, will the real RG Allen Wilson please stand up? Because what I see right now is not real and not being true to themselves. Wow. What's going to be interesting on when we can gather, who will see, what will the meaning of that be to the person that's doing the gathering? I want to go out and give everybody a hug because I'm a hugger, and I want to be like, yeah, I love you. And so I kind of did, I already know who in my spirit, who I love, who I could care, I want to go hug the people I love that I know that that really,
and who love you, right? The reciprocal relationships. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and put that up. So we are with Dr. R.G. Allen Wilson. She's my resident therapist here every Tuesday night when I don't have my man John Taylor in here. And we're talking about 3 ways that how can you manage your anxieties. Number 1, accept what you can't control. Boom. Number 2, practice gratitude. Number 3, focus on what you can control. So that means, people, give up. If you know you had a trip planned,
let it go. Let it go.
Let it go. Let it go. Plan another trip. It's okay. They're giving refunds. They came out. Companies, they have to give refunds. It's the law. If you didn't hear that, you heard it first from me. It's the law. Practice gratitude. As you always say, keep a book of journaling, of being thankful for the things that you have done and the things that are in your life, and be appreciative of those things that you have in your life, because there comes a time when we can't, you always want to say, I wanted to say so much. Just give a call to people that you love, give a call to people that, that are in your sphere that you might not talk to. And I think a lot of people did this in the beginning. I don't know where it's at now, if people are still feeling that, time brings on a different, change. But, with the people you love, your friends, I think your family, even your coworkers, if they're doing a good job for you and sitting in for you and doing certain things, practice that gratitude. But then also, too, like you said, focus in on things that you can control. And meaning, self-help. You can do that. Yeah, you can do that to yourself. Just relax, take a bath. You're always taking a shower. You never get to sit.
Speaking of that, listen, Morgan had a wonderful bath last night. It was part of his birthday weekend, and he was like, "Babe, can you run me a bath?" And I ran the bath and put the candles up for him, and he just so enjoyed it. And that's something that neither of us do a lot because we were so busy,
Right.
getting up and coming home and all that kind of stuff. So love on each other, right? There's love is should not be underrated. It
Right.
should not. Love
Right.
and like, right? Liking ourselves, treating ourselves well, treating the people that we care about well, and then re-innovating what it is that we are designed to do. We can redesign our lives during this time. What is it? If you're not taking a trip, what are you going to do? You're going to just sit there? You could be innovative about create your own oases. I'm going to be doing my gardening. What is it that you really want to do that you never had time to do, but now you have time to do it? Or things you used to do that you don't do anymore, or you hadn't done before COVID because you had 3 jobs or you were raising the kids. And by the way, let me started on kids being overscheduled. Kids have like 10 million activities to do.
Right.
Athletics and academics and dance, and every child I know was overscheduled before COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
So the parents didn't know their kids. The kids didn't know their parents. Nobody sat down and ate a meal together. That was unheard of years ago. You did not, Charlie, you grew up in Georgia. You did not sit down to the dinner table, did you?
No, it was every night. Wait a minute. First of all, okay, let's stop there. First, here you go. First, we had to cook the meal, okay? We cooked for them. And then my sister Sharma, which she can tell you, we had to, basically, we were the help, okay? As my mom said, we had you. That's why she had us. That's what she would tell me. Why do you think I had you? We were the help. So we were the maids, the cleaners, the housekeepers, the cooks, the chefs.
And that's what I'm saying is the parents taking care of the, making sure the kids had everything, cooking and cleaning and all that. No.
We grew up in a store. My mother and father had a store, so they were there from 8 o'clock in the morning, or 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night. So we did a lot of things around their schedule. So even when they got in late at night, sometimes we were with them coming in late at night. So, it was different things like that. So my upbringing is totally, I can't even, y'all can't even compare with my upbringing, because my upbringing was rude.
rude.
It was rude. Okay, I'm abused right now. I'm getting triggered.
Listen, but that goes back to the internal processing, which you've done with your therapist, and knowing what your triggers are. By the way, for those persons who recognize that you're getting a little edgy or you're feeling like you're snappy at your partner or your kids or what have you, pause, breathe, reflect, then identify where your triggers are, because we all have triggers, and you can measure your trigger by that you feel like your reaction is much greater than the infraction, right? When your reaction is greater than your infraction, then you're getting triggered some kind of way, and it's not just what happened, it's what's beneath the surface. And then begin to respond differently so that you're not off to the races with your kids or with your loved one or even with yourself without really fully understanding what's going on underneath.
Because I'm glad you brought that up, because the thing that we should not be doing is trying to go back and going back to the old world of what we lived before this all happened. You should have taken the steps to realize, like you said, even with the kids that are over scheduled, you should realize that's a little bit too much. You know, you should realize, you know what, look, I'm not going to cook every night, but I did enjoy the fact that we could sit around, I could look in my kid's eye and see what was bothering them. If something is bothering them, you know how many, the rate of suicide is going up. And the reason why suicide is going up, because your mom and dad is not sitting at the dinner table, looking in your eyes and telling you, hey, look at me, what's going on in your life? You know,
Exactly.
There's no connection there. So let's go out here and see what else is going on with people. Whitney said, yes, dealing with the root of the issue, it's issues more than the symptoms. Morgan said, catching up with tech is more generational. Yeah, that can be the case, Morgan. Sharma, humanity, we don't love humanity. That's why we can allow all the killing that's happening in the world. Whoa. That's kind of true. We kind of, yeah, we don't see people as people. We have dehumanized everybody, especially the Black man, when it comes down to how people in the world have seen us and through the eyes of different prisms, depending on where you exist and where you live. Excuse me, not where you exist, but where you live.
We live.
Leave America, we're worshipped in countries. When you travel, when you see that, oh my God, they bow down to you, and you know, here you're like, you don't see the greatness, but they see the greatness. They don't want to admit the greatness that they see and that they.
Well, that's why we're a threat in many ways, right? And then that externalized racism then becomes internalized racism, and we don't realize sometimes how powerful we truly are because of those external messages.
Right, and then also too, it bothers us because we don't know how to separate fact from fiction, understanding that that's just the way you see it. I will always say, when I was growing up, I used to be bullied, and they used to call me, because of my big eyes, they used to call me Froggy. So they was like, Froggy.
Oh.
So, that was the thing, right? And so one woman came out of my father's store, and she saw me one day, and she said, oh, baby, you got such beautiful brown eyes. Changed everything.
You were like, why?
So then the next day I went to school, and I was like, they said Froggy. I said, well, I got beautiful brown eyes. And then joke stopped. That right there, I realized you might not love it, but somebody else does. And that's what you have to realize, that we can't please everybody. There's no one thing, one size fit all type of scenario. You might love something and the other person might hate it, and you got to deal with it. But you know what? That's for them to deal with, not for you to internalize it and deal with that. Sonia Shields said, lifting up compassion and kindness. I find that people will point out ugly via social media, but treat people in their lives unkind.
Yeah, I mean, and I think hurt people, and I think that we are in a lot of pain, and we externalize that by hurting other people with our words, our deeds, and our actions. And it goes back to self-reflection, even asking yourself, like, why did I say that? Or why did I get so triggered and strike out with my words or actions? And you see those Facebook engagements where people are just, because we're all in the house, so people are looking for opportunity to engage. But when they engage, it's like, it's ugly. Sometimes it's really nasty. And It's like that statement that person made, that made you so enraged that you decided it was a good thing to say what you said and hit send.
Right.
So is the problem really what the person said, or is the problem with yourself? having a hairline trigger to strike out or act out your internalized anger and rage.
Right. And I think that's what you were stating earlier of understanding those little nuances where you have to understand yourself to understand that we are human beings first, but also two, we need to put in the work to identify what is triggering us, to go off and snap off, and to be mean per se, and not kind in the ways that we treat our neighbors, treat our friends, treat our family members and stuff. Also, let's say family used to function as a team. We were all contributed to making the household work. I feel lucky to have had that experience, and I'm hoping that maybe this is the case now for some and appreciate it. I'm with that. I agree 100%. We were a team, and, and I think people who came out of that, who really came out of that, chose their adult lives to create. We don't have the same family structure because we don't all live on the same street like we used to,
right,
or around the corner in the same town. We live across, but we now can pick, our friends and who we choose. Like you, our crew.
Yeah, we're family.
We're family in the sense where we can pick up a phone and we can talk to each other and tell each other right from wrong and whatever the case may be and what's going on. Whitney also said, I like that your reaction is greater than the infraction. That your reaction is greater than the infraction. Michelle Charles said, latchkey kids, we all were latchkey kids, know what it's like to be alone. COVID isn't hard to teach latchkey kids. True, which I believe that. What else we got? Hurt people, yes. And yes, latchkey kids were built for COVID. I do agree with that. I think, I've been perfectly fine sitting up in this house and not doing anything, even though I would love to go and have a nice dinner because I'm tired of cooking.
Tired of cooking for yourself? Are you?
But I'm good. I've learned some new things, new tricks. Can't keep an old trick down, an old trick ponytail, as they would say. So that's that. What else you guys got out there to say? We're wrapping this up. We got 3 ways to make sure that your anxiety is how to manage it. Number 1, accept what you can't control. Number 2, practice gratitude. And number 3, focus on what you can control. Because basically the bottom line is we're adjusting to a new rhythm of life and what that life is. A new rhythm of life and what that means and what that looks like for all of us. And I think we do better. We will do ourselves an injustice if you go out and try to recreate the life you had before COVID.
Well, I ask people to think about, well, was it so great? Like maybe there were some great things about it, but if you didn't know your kids and you didn't know your spouse and you didn't like yourself, then maybe it wasn't as great as you're making it out to be. Like when I used to work for in addictions, I used to work with recovering addicts years ago, and they would say, don't glorify the high. Like go all the way back to when you were selling your kids or you were doing all these things that high took you. Don't go back to like when it was fun and you were just getting high recreationally. No, play the tape all the way through to where it got you to, so that you can actually see and feel that pain. And then really, they call it rock bottom. So then when you go to the bottom, you really do want to put the work in. If you glorify it, like some of us are doing, saying that, our lives were so great, maybe parts of it were, but that came with a cost. Working 3 jobs comes with the cost. Making lots of money and not being home with your kids sometimes, that's a cost. There's a cost, there's a reaction and to everything. So if you want to transform your life and live a different life, then really take stock. Be honest with what was good and what was not so good. And then what is it that you actually want your life to be like? So that's the next part of reducing anxiety. Do some vision casting. Envision actually what it is that you want to create, and then gradually move the needle to starting to create that. If you want more peace in your life and less drama, then it starts with you. Mahatma Gandhi says we must be the change we wish to see in others. right? So if it starts with us, then creating that synergy and that calm and that peace, that begins with your own energy because it's all vibrations. Are you meditating? Are you doing your mindfulness? Are you journaling? Are you having meaningful engagements, or are you still engaging with all the folks that brought all the drama to your life in the past? Right? Are you hanging out with people that are lifting you up or putting you down? Are all of your wonderful ideas getting dashed because somebody says, oh, you can't do that? So those are the meaningful engagements that we need to continue to surround ourselves with so that that decreases our anxiety. And then sort of tap in, do a body scan and tap into your anxiety and where it is, and begin to soothe that part of yourself, because nobody really is responsible for soothing you but you. People can contribute, but at the end of the day, you're responsible for your self-love, for your self-care, for your self-soothing, and for decreasing your own anxiety.
All right, man. That's a word. We're going to go to the listening audience one last time to see what they have to say and if they have any questions for you. And then we're going to wrap this great session up. I always love talking to you because
I love talking to you too.
We bring it 100. Let's see. Dave out there said, we have become a society of no consequences. People act the way they do because they know they will not suffer as a result. Dave, I agree 100%. Let's see. Hey, India, what's happening in DC there? Whitney, I was one to, okay, everybody was a latchkey kids. Yep. I'm appreciating this pause so much. I can't go back to the rat race. I don't want to be a rat. I'm happy being a person again.
Ooh,
that's a big statement. I mean, I think it takes a while for you to like get slapped across the face, a couple of times to wake you up. Do you see yourself? Do you see yourself? Do you see yourself?
Running.
Right. On that hamster wheel. Yeah, running on that hamster wheel. Gotta get that coin, gotta get that coin, And getting the coin is great, but are you loving the way you live while you get that coin? That's what's important. So Trina, hey, what's up? Sonia said, be peace. It's not the stimulus, it's the response. So I think you guys got a great dose of what's going on out here in this world today. We all know that everybody is feeling the reason why this show was tonight. What we talked about tonight was basically how to manage your anxiety. And also, too, just really how to think about yourself and what you put on yourself so you can manage the anxiety. Kind of just release and let things flow.
Relax, relate, release. And for those people, Charlie, that are going back out there and you're focusing on somebody not wearing a mask, focus on yourself. Just like people say, well, I don't like what they said. Well, if you don't like it, remove yourself. If you're in a space and you feel like somebody is not properly socially distancing, remove yourself, right? That's what you can control. You can't control them, but you can control yourself.
Right.
So
you pull up to the station, you pull up to the grocery store, you see people not wearing masks, just drive off, go to the next one. You'll be all right. It might take you a little extra time to do what you need to do, but you can get it done. With that gratification, I tell you, that gratification kills us, that entitlement that, that we want it now, that instant gratification, it just really puts us in a place where we cause the stress on ourselves,
We are our own perpetrators.
Yes.
Secondary perpetrators, I call them.
Okay. Well, everybody, that is Dr. R.G. Allen Wilson. She's the resident therapist here every Tuesday night. Just want to thank you. And as a reminder it's okay to take it slow. Even if your friends, your co-workers, or your family members are coming out of isolation, remember, you can forego get-togethers until you feel comfortable. You don't have to be in everything all the time. You don't have to be there. I said this year, 2020, look at it as the year of intimate gatherings. I think I was talking to Joanne about this.
I like that.
6 or 10. That way you can control your environment and you see exactly who's coming and going, and you really know. It's hard to keep up with more than 10 people. So if you do 2020 as a 6 and 10 year, I think you just have to look at just.
I like that. The year of intimate gatherings, like intimacy, right? So then you have that ability to see into that other person and they see into you. You can't do that with a whole bunch of people. I like that, Charlie. Then you can have the courageous conversations with your intimate connections.
There you go. And you can continue that engagement the way you really want, and you with the people that you really want too. Because you're beginning to curate your life.
Yes. Making your own selections.
Peace out. I'm out. Talk to you. Love you, Doc.
Thanks for having me. Love you too, Charlie.
Bye, babe.
Let the sun shine. 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 Let the